All right, thank you, everyone. Nice to see you all this evening. I know it's late, and a lot of us just got coffee in our system a few minutes ago. So thank you for being here. My name is Tulsi Modi. I work with the Planetary Health Alliance, and today we are in this Empowering Future Leaders session. We're here with some great speakers, so I'm going to introduce them. So first we have Emin. He's at Johns Hopkins University, the Caucasian University Alliance in Turkey, and is part of the United Nations Faith for Earth Youth Council. Next up, we have Ursula Gately, also Johns Hopkins Associated, former PHA team member. We love her. We love her. We love all of our panelists, but she is now at Johns Hopkins Medical School. Is also the clinical engagement advisor at Planetary Health Alliance and a steering committee member at Chesapeake Physicians for Social Responsibility. And online, Jeremy Pivor, also a former PHA team member, is the Partnerships and Youth Engagement Director at BAUSI. So if any of you guys were at the reception on Saturday, those beautiful photos that you saw were brought to you by BAUSI. So
they were beautiful.
Yes. So in today's session, I'm really going to let our speakers run this session, but we'll start off with just quick introductions from each of you, and we can start with you, Emin.
Yes,
Okay.
of course. So hi everyone. Thank you. So hi everyone. It's great to be here. So as Tulsi said, I'm Emin. I'm a sophomore at Johns Hopkins University currently. So my journey with youth activism started in high school when I first got involved within the United Nations system. I was lucky enough to get involved with the Planetary Health Alliance after a couple of years of being within the UN through governmental organizations such as the Ministry of Education and Science of the Kyrgyz Republic. And we did some great work together in the UN, including organizing events at the High-Level Political Forum and the General Assembly. So currently, I'm on the UNEP's Faith for Earth Youth Council. I am also a Planetary Health Campus Ambassador. I'm also working with a group of young women who are leading an initiative called Young Women Leaders for Planetary Health. And the point of this initiative is to use non-formal and informal educational methods to reach students in middle and high schools, especially young women, across the world, across 10 different countries roughly so far. But yeah, so I'm working as a he for she coordinator there. And what drives me personally is the belief that we as young people should not only be looking towards the future where we will be leaders, but that we also have the power to make an impact today. So I think that recognizing that and working off of that premise is extremely useful for our own mental mindset. So yeah, I'll pass it to Ursula.
Hi, everyone. I know quite a few folks in the room, but for those who don't, my name's Ursula. I'm a first-year medical student at Johns Hopkins, like Tulsi mentioned. And during my gap year, I worked at Planetary Health Alliance. I did my undergrad at Georgetown University in biology of global health, so very familiar with this area. It's fun to be back down here. So my experience with youth activism really started in college. So I found that there weren't many kind of areas in which people were talking about environment and health in tandem at Georgetown. So in order to address this, I went to the one faculty member, Laura Onderko, for folks who might know her, and asked her what I should do. And she recommended that I reach out to some local organizations as well as then consider creating a student group. So that's exactly what I did. I spent my junior year working as an advocacy and research fellow at Virginia Clinicians for Climate Action, which is affiliated with the Med Society Consortium. And I also created the Georgetown Undergraduate Environmental Health Collective. So this group was aimed at creating curriculum expansion opportunities in the realm of climate, environmental studies, planetary health, and health, basically, as well as then looking at ways that we could get involved with local advocacy. We were really lucky to get an APHA I forget exactly what the title is. It's some sort of like emerging leaders in climate and health. These things kind of have similar names oftentimes. But that was basically a grant that allowed us to get up and started. And the first thing we did was we hosted a weekend of basically different events to engage students in the topics of planetary health. So what we did is we created no-soap blankets and then donated them to a local shelter for unhoused individuals. We did a park restoration cleanup with the Park Service at a park near Georgetown's campus. And we also had a speaker series where folks got to learn more about what people do in the space, kind of at all levels. So from that, I really got excited and invigorated to continue work in this space. Now my focus is a little bit more local in the context of Baltimore specifically. So Tulsi mentioned some of the things that I do now, but one of the main ones is working with Chesapeake Physicians for Social Responsibility. So as a member of their steering committee, what that essentially means is that I've been writing some testimony for local legislature, specifically for an act called the Cherish Act, which is aimed at basically garnering enthusiasm at Maryland Department of Electric and creating a change where they would be able to take environmental justice into account when they build new projects that might be highly polluting in Baltimore. This is especially important for communities like Curtis Bay, where there already are giant medical waste incinerators that have a very strong impact on the community. I also do research in Curtis Bay specifically. It's community-based participatory research, looking at how we can kind of work together to address coal dust exposure, as well as then quality of life in the area. And I'm also a medical student in my free time, so I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's me.
Jeremy, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I can see everyone online, but I cannot see who's in the room. So I'm just waving to you. So it's good to see you all. Thank you for having me. My name's Jeremy Pivor. I'm based just outside Boston, Massachusetts. Sorry I can't be there in person today. My journey in planetary health started really in the conservation field. I worked in conservation for over a decade, particularly ocean conservation, in college and throughout the world from the United States, Indonesia, Madagascar, the high seas, and other places. And during those experiences, it was seeing the intersections of the environment and human health that then really got me to learn more about what we now call planetary health. This was before the time that planetary health was coined. So I went to school for environmental biology undergraduate and then got a master's in health and medical sciences with a focus in planetary health. And I was lucky enough after my master's program to work at the Planetary Health Alliance when it was based at Harvard as senior program coordinator there, really working to expand its global reach and relations, building up the regional hubs and also the Sao Paulo Declaration that we drafted with the global community. It was the first global declaration on planetary health in the world. Now there's an exciting planetary health roadmap, which is a really great effort. And so after that, once PHA moved to Baltimore, I joined BOWSEAT, where I'm now the Partnerships and Youth Engagement Director. And so BOWSEAT is the world's largest youth environmental program for the creative arts. We engage over 38,000 young creatives from over 140 countries. So it's been very exciting working with youth all the way down to 11 years old and all the way up to 24 years old. And for me, with youth advocacy too, done some work in the UN climate realm, but I'm, not to age myself, but 33 now. And so I'm kind of approaching that, in the UN, the youth stops at 35. So I'm trying to get to that point where really uplifting other youth voices and trying to create avenues and support for other youth. And so in my work, I direct our fellowship program where we support youth around the world who are doing incredible projects, which I'll talk more about later. But that's my kind of goals right now based on the experiences I've gained both at the Planetary Health Alliance and now at BOWSEAT to uplift youth voices. And I think that's a really strong role that youth advocacy can do is uplifting each other's voices too, especially those from marginalized communities either in the US or around the world. And so looking forward to talking with you all.
So thank you all three for your introductions. The way we've structured this session is we want to talk at the local level what youth can do. Then we can also talk at a national level and then the international and global level. So each of our speakers will talk about different initiatives that they're involved in or they know of, and how youth today can get involved with that. So Jeremy, I'm actually going to turn it right back to you if you can speak a little bit more at the global level.
Great, sure. So yeah, so as I was saying, BowSeat really works around the globe, 140 countries. And one of the main projects I want to share was our fellowship program. And because that's really exposed me to so many incredible youth who are doing projects all around the world. And they're emphasized on either working related to oceans, waterways, and or climate change, but through a creative arts lens. And so I have a few examples I just wanted to share with you all. It kind of gives a taste for not only what our fellows are doing, but what some possibilities are to do even at, in your own communities. And so first comes from the United States, where we have Paloma Lenz at Yale University. She's doing a project called Myconaut, where she's gathering invasive Japanese knotweed and kind of repurposing and reimagining what we can do with invasive species. And so she's gathering all of that and combining it with mycelium to create new building structures, which is super cool. And so she's created kind of a test installation, an arts installation using it, but thinking about more so how we can create new building materials through these regenerative mechanisms. And so that's kind of an engineering approach to planetary health and creative too. Another one comes from Kenya, where Purity, it's Mazingira School Drive, and so they're reclaiming and repurposing abandoned gold mines. And so these are areas where there's been a lot of health issues because of gold mine leaching into the water. The habitat has been destroyed there, affecting climate change, its effect to be able to absorb carbon for climate change. And so she first used her performing arts background and with her friends to do performances for communities around the area to garner support and also educate people about these issues. And that garnered hundreds of people wanting to participate in this. And over 1 year, they were able to replant 10,000 plus trees in over 30 abandoned gold mine sites. And what was cool though is they didn't just do that. They did trainings for women and youth on how to do new economic models for the women to be able to be self-sufficient there, and use these sites as well. Another thing that we are now hearing a lot about is mental health and climate change. And we had one group in Nigeria who were using art therapy to go into schools where these youth, they don't really, a lot of times in other countries, there's not a lot of, art practices done in schools. And also the topics of climate change and mental health are not talked about that often. And so they're using sessions, doing it through art and nature-based therapy to have youth be able to express themselves and talk about these topics for the first time. And really positive results came from that, and they're going to be repeating that in other schools now too. And the government has taken a notice to that and wants to expand on that as well. And then one final project I wanted to share are the Eco Poets. It's one of my favorite. They're this poetry collective where they developed new poetry about climate change and all different issues related to it, whether invasive species or mental health. And they went out and reached over 5,000 youth in the Kano State, Nigeria, to raise awareness not only about climate change, but then what other youth could do to benefit it. And they got so popular that TV, radio picked it up too. And I mention all of these because one, it's all very different ways to do it, but the overarching aspect is creativity that a lot of youth around the world globally are already harnessing into, and people respond to that. I think because when we're talking about youth advocacy, whether it's local, national, global, the first step is really to change hearts, and then you can change minds. And so how do you actually change hearts first? And I think these creative methods have done a really good way of doing that. And happy to talk more, but I'll hand it over.
Thanks, Jeremy. Emin, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about if youth want to become involved in international systems like the UN, what's the best way forward?
So I'm the youngest one on the panel, which somehow in the context of this makes me both the most experienced and the most inexperienced one. So I don't want to, as a young person myself, I don't want to go into this kind of in a, you should do this, you should do that perspective, but rather I want to share what I did and then draw some good practices from that. So I'm aware that, young activists may be more hesitant getting into the international sphere of activism. Because at the end of the day, the international level is filled with these behemoth organizations like the United Nations, How do you even begin to get integrated into UN efforts and UN activities? So one thing that I think we need to keep in mind is that as young leaders who will be in charge of the world in the future, we are the ones who are going to be leading some conversations as well at this international level. And international organizations like the UN are very well aware of this. They're very well aware that we are set to take charge in the future. So they have these initiatives and these activities for us to get involved and get integrated. So one that I want to share that really benefited me, this is how I got into the United Nations in the first place, is the Economic and Social Council, or ECOSOC Youth Forum. And this youth forum is the only permanent annual youth-focused forum or conference at the United Nations. It is a great resource for young activists who want to get more into the work that the United Nations is doing as a stepping stone. Because when you attend this, you get the opportunity to connect with so many other young activists and youth organizations that are working within the United Nations system, which then allow you to get integrated further into the UN. Because the key thing about organizations like the UN is that the longer you are working within their sphere, the easier it is for you to get things and to do things within them. So, for example, based off of my own example, I'm currently a board member or a member of the Youth Council for UNEP's Faith for Earth initiative. And the way I was able to do that is through organizing events at the UN, including at the ECOSOC Youth Forum, the HLPF, the General Assembly, in coordination with the Planetary Alliance. So I think that that is extremely important to keep in mind. And then secondly, another way that I want to mention to get more involved at these international organizations is that you can go through regional organizations. And these regional organizations can be non-governmental or governmental. For example, for me, the Caucasus University is alliance or association. There's a name change going on at the moment. But working through them allowed me to have more opportunities to exercise leadership rather than just passively attend things at the United Nations. So, for example, at the ECOSOC Youth Forum, you need another organization under which you can work the umbrella of to organize side events. And to do that, I mean, you need non-governmental organizations like the Caucasus Universities Alliance. In terms of governmental organizations, when you work with governmental organizations, everything becomes so much easier within the UN system, because the thing that makes the United Nations is the member states. Without the member states, it just turns into another global activism initiative. So having a member state backing you and policymakers, which I think we're going to be talking about later as well, is really going to set you apart within the UN, and it's going to allow you to access those upper echelons like the General Assembly. So those are key points, I think. In terms of staying under the umbrella of organizations in order to do things like organize events at the UN, you can also create your own initiative. And this is a little bit more difficult to do because as young activists, the odds are stacked a little bit more against us. But once you have some experience at various regional organizations and including the governmental and non-governmental ones, you can certainly move forward with creating your initiative and working off of that. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention that I think is very important is that don't be afraid of just cold emailing people, because like genuinely the people who receive those emails are as human as you are, and they're going to look at it from a similar perspective that you will. So I think that doing cold emailing is an extremely useful practice for young activists, and that's what I want to say.
That's great. Thank you so much, Emin. I'd like to turn it to Ursula. I know you mentioned a little bit about some of the projects locally, but wondering if you could expand about different pathways through those projects.
Yeah, happy to. Also, I love the cold emails. I too am a fan. It's part of what landed me my job at CHA. With so many different environmental justice and environmental health challenges happening in our own backyard, there are many ways to get involved and kind of start at the local. I think oftentimes young people find it easiest to start at the local because it's really what they know best. So that's kind of where I started, knowing that I couldn't really sleep at night without knowing that I was doing something for the community that was nourishing me and I was learning so much from. So there are many ways to get involved as a young person in a local space. I think the easiest place to start is if you're pursuing some sort of degree program to get involved at the university. That's where I started, whether that's creating an undergraduate environmental health group or just getting compost bins into your school. I think generally making noise and kind of garnering students around a shared goal can kind of change hearts, like Jeremy mentioned, and showing the administration or whoever the adults in the room are that the change you want to see is worth doing. That's how, after about 4 years of students above me at the School of Medicine asking for compost bins, we finally got them this fall. That and cold emailing actually also got us those bins. Then you can kind of expand from the university to the community more broadly, in which you might sit, whether that comes in the form of volunteering with local groups. Personally, what I did at Georgetown is I volunteered with mutual aid groups in my area, focusing on street outreach to unhoused individuals, really thinking about how you could garner change at the local level with pre-existing groups, kind of instead of reinventing the wheel, trying to expand into the community in a way that's mindful of the fact that you might spend limited time there. Like I only spent 5 years in DC. So creating an entire organization outside of the university might not have been something that would have been sustained past my tenure. So getting involved with street outreach was a great way to do that. And then as well as aligning yourself with local nonprofits outside of community organizing. So I mentioned what I've been doing with Physicians for Social Responsibility at the local level in the Chesapeake region. I think writing testimony is a great way to learn more about the legislative process, as well as then think more critically about what changes you'd like to see in the community and then support community initiatives. I think especially as a medical student, I've started to learn that the voice of medical students carries a lot of weight and the voice of young people carries a lot of weight. If you walk into Annapolis, into the State House, and you give testimony, you're about 20 years younger than the closest person. And people will perk up after hearing hours and hours of oral testimony to listen to what you have to say. Because they recognize that the future is a concerning thing for us. And when they really see that you're excited and motivated about something, that really will move the needle in a way that I didn't quite expect and have been pleasantly surprised to see more of. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I leave that. But
yeah, thank you. You're actually teeing me up really well for my next question here, which focuses on youth narratives and youth voices. And we know that it needs to change a little bit depending on who your target audience is. And I was wondering, and this question could go to any of you three, what are some youth-led strategies for engaging with policymakers, funders, and people in executive level positions?
I was talking earlier about governmental organizations and how helpful they are at institutions like the United Nations. And the key way to get backing from such governmental organizations is through engaging with policymakers. And the most important thing, in my opinion, for a young activist to keep in mind when they're approaching a policymaker is that you have to think about what they can get from you as much as what you can get from them, because their interest is that's what their interest is going to be about. One way of doing this that is great in my experience is coming up with flashier solutions, flashier ideas, and approaching them with those. For example, the way that I got involved with the Ministry of Education and Science of the Kyrgyz Republic is through approaching them with a proposal on educating doctors in the Kyrgyz Republic on democracy using a grant from the United Nations Democracy Fund. And this was, in theory, to strengthen the democratic institutions within the Republic. So this is a bit outside of the environmental sphere, this example, but coming out with flashier ideas and solutions and innovations like this is going to grab you a lot more eyes than just coming and saying, oh, I can help you do what you're doing currently, which the staffers of policymakers can do arguably better than a young activist, because that's what their experience has all been about entirely. So that's the main thing. The second thing that I think we might go into later, but I'm not sure, is being prepared for these conversations with policymakers, because they're going to be attentive as long as you can keep their attention. And part of this goes through crafting a personal narrative around how you yourself relate to the thing that you're pitching to them. And part of it is things like elevator pitches, which are, classic ways of grabbing someone's attention early on. And thirdly, and this is more of a minor point for international level policymaking activities, is that when you're talking with policymakers, it really helps to be a little culturally aware, because it really helps you set your best foot forward if you know things like, in this policymaker's culture, how would you refer to people who are at a rank that is maybe above you, for example? How should I refer to this person in the position that they are? Which, for example, is going to change from culture to culture in terms of the level of formality and deference that you should show. So this is just one example of being culturally aware in these sorts of situations, but it's really going to help you set your best foot forward when you're talking with a policymaker from a different region of the world.
Yeah, I can speak to the perspective when you're talking to funders. I think what's been interesting for me the past couple years, I've switched into the role of looking at several applications to fund. And, as someone that's been a youth advocate in the past, worked in youth projects, everything we've talked about, requires funding. And that's oftentimes the biggest barrier for youth to engage in projects, engage in advocacy, go to these conferences is, issues with funding. It's just a reality of things. And so my goal with the work I'm doing is try to make that more accessible. And perhaps a few kind of takeaways already from that, kind of how the best way to approach funders is, or most important things also to include when you're talking to funders, is first and foremost really focusing on what's the tangible impact. That's what the people who are funding, or at least have the grants that they're giving out, want. And also a spirit of collaboration and engagement. That's not just you alone going at this, but that you're either engaging your local community, or you're having partners that you're working with, or there are other youth you're working together with that you're applying for this certain grant or project funding, or conference funding. And then making sure this seems like an obvious one, but not everyone does it, meet the funding criteria. Are there certain things that the grant is specifically meant for? For example, the fellowship program that I direct, we focus specifically on oceans, waterways, and climate change through a creative arts lens. And so if that creative arts part is missing, we're probably not going to fund you. And then everyone probably knows this in the room, but SMART goals, making sure that those goals are specific, they're measurable. And with measurable, can it be measured? And is there a plan to how you're going to measure it? They're achievable. So can you convince me that we can get this done within the time frame and funding constraints? So a budget, a timeline are important. That really shows the funder or whoever you're asking for funding that you've really done your homework, and recognizing the barriers or challenges up front before you even started it. Making sure that the project or whatever you're asking for funding for is relevant. Is the idea thoughtful, and did you do your research? And time bound. Deadlines are key and very important. Similar to what Emin was saying, we like to see if something's really unique in approach or an issue or geographic area or execution. So for example, I may get, in a year, we get hundreds of applications for funding. I may get 50 that are projects related to converting waste into sellable products, which is fantastic. But if I can only choose, say, 12 or 15 projects for that year to fund, I'll at most only be able to choose one or two of those 50 projects. So, really finding what's that unique thing or that niche that you can bring that might set yourself apart. And then making sure that your projects are genuine. It's easy to tell if the proposal isn't coming 100% from you. And also don't use AI at all to write anything in your applications because it becomes very impersonal. It's a challenge we're starting to deal with. And finally, I think Emin mentioned this as well, personality, and really showing your personality is important, making it memorable. And so if there's opportunities to submit videos, those are really great ways to get buy-in from grants or funders as well.
I want to echo that. I think knowing your why and having a strong personal narrative is helpful kind of regardless of what you want to do or what you're going into, whether you're applying for a grant or a research project, medical school in the future, or anything kind of in that realm. I think it can be challenging to talk about building a personal brand, but I think it's important to be audacious when you're approaching challenges and creating those more kind of unique solutions. And then something that wasn't mentioned that I just wanted to bring up is the importance of identifying strong mentors, whether those are individuals in your respective field or perhaps in tangentially related areas. For me right now, that's really looked like trying to find mentors that are working in clinical practice, as well as then have some sort of interdisciplinary component of their career, something that makes it a little bit more non-traditional, especially in identifying kind of roadblocks that you might encounter as you forge ahead in whatever your respective field might be. It's important to have those individuals that you can troubleshoot with, that you can send an application to get their thoughts prior to submitting. Just generally, I think it's incredibly helpful and really helped me understand not only what I want to be doing in this space, but also how I can get there.
Great, thank you. Any final thoughts? I say final because I hope you've all been paying attention, because the next activity or the first activity we're going to do is we're going to ask each of you to get into breakout rooms. Maybe someone from this table can move to one of these tables so it's a little bit more even. And what we're going to ask you to do is craft a personal narrative. We're going to let you choose who your target audience is, what you're asking for, but we're going to work with you to do it. And you have the speakers here to help guide you along the way using what they've used to achieve their successful spots right now. And so I'll let the room here do that, just kind of shift around and begin on that. And for those online, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, so bear with me while I do that. All right, so if we could wrap up our final thoughts. First of all, thank you so much. I know it's not best to like activate your brain at this hour of the day after a long 2 days of conference, but you guys are doing great. We really appreciate it. And we'd love to maybe have one person from each table just kind of present their narratives or ask any questions that they found along the way. I'm going to start with this table, lovely table of right here.
It's a sweater down there. Hey, everybody. Yeah, it's on. Yeah, it's just for
Hello.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Hi, everybody. We are not of youth. But we realize
There so that everyone
yeah,
can
sure.
see you.
Hi, Jeremy. So right here. Okay. So we again are not of youth, but we have youth in our lives, and we kind of spoke more from the perspective of education and how we can mentor youth in our lives. So, for example, I'm going to be teaching a planetary health course. It's a 1-month intensive course at my alma mater in April to May. So I wanted to come to this specifically because I want to soak up all of your knowledge of how can I inspire youth to get involved in planetary health, no matter what their interests are. So that was my experience, and we also talked about, some of the group has children, and how to inspire them and get them involved. And I'm missing something.
That sponsorship aspect, like how do they bring you directly? Oh, no,
Yeah.
bringing your mentors together.
Oh,
Like,
yes, thank you. Yes, I knew I was missing something. Getting mentors together. So the importance of having a mentor, but also sometimes because planetary health is so transdisciplinary, you have one mentor in this area and then one mentor in this area. And you can have both mentors, but kind of bringing everyone together because there's a room at the table for everybody with every kind of interest. And that's one of the great things about planetary health. So that's pretty much what we talked about. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I want to put two tables in conversation with one another because you all were talking about different strategies to be good mentors, as well as then identifying like relevance for stakeholders. And this table was talking about similar themes. So not to put y'all on the spot, but I'll bring this in conversation right next to each other.
So come up
Oh,
here,
sure,
sorry.
So
Poor Jeremy is just
somewhat intimidating.
Hi, Jeremy. So our table is a mix of different, we have a PSR representative, Physicians for Social Responsibility from the greater Boston area. And then me and Madison are from Michigan Clinicians for Climate Action. So kind of both orgs. And we had a good conversation just kind of back and forth about the mentors in our own lives and how we were brought into this maybe when we were youth and what got us there. And I think we talked a little bit about the intersectionalism and how this is a movement that everybody should have a stake in and how empowering that can be for youth. Madison told us about her sister and how that brought her into the movement. I'm missing a lot though, I think. Yep. Okay. Yeah, well, thank you. This was a great session. So back to you.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna come to this table next.
Introduce yourself and work that you would do.
Of course. Hi, everybody. Hi, Jeremy. My name is Zilda. My table, we're all high schoolers, so still kind of get into the experience of planetary health. We kind of talked about like what work we're doing right now. We're all currently part of an organization named Young Women Leaders for Planetary Health. So kind of trying to raise awareness and activism about young women leadership within planetary health, reaching high schools and middle schools, reaching other students our age. So we kind of talked about that as our past experiences in the future, hoping to reach more young women from other parts of the globe. We have a lot of countries in our initiative currently, but kind of expanding that, doing more program-based work, opening more official organizations. So that's kind of our hope for the future.
Thank you. Last but not least, Olivia.
Okay, hi everyone online. So my table was really nice and just talked to me basically the whole time because I'm a youth technically until next month. So that was nice. And they were really gracious to talk to me about a company I just started in planetary health consulting called Biome Planetary Health Solutions. And I'm based in upstate New York, and we were just talking about some of the questions I had and then questions they had for me, and they're like letting me practice answering and things like that, which was really great. And yeah, so I don't know, that's kind of all. But yeah, if you want to check it out, go to my website, biomephs.com.
Thank you. I know we just have a few minutes left, so I think what would be great if we could just have final thoughts from our speakers, and then we'll let you guys go enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, Tulsi. Thank you so much, everyone, for kind of engaging with us in this exercise. It feels very homegrown, which I think in many ways parallels kind of planetary health in terms of what it aims to be, as well as then how it started. So that's really exciting to see. Yeah, I have a lot of enthusiasm right now, just hearing about what folks are up to, thoughts that are kind of swirling around in people's brains. And it's exciting to know that we have a lot of different shared experiences and shared values, regardless of the unique context from which we come. So excited, more than anything else. I'll pass it to Emin.
Thank you, Ursula. I think you echoed a lot of things that were on my mind as well in terms of being excited towards the future. And I'm just really happy that, our generation has so many young activists who are working actively in the present to change the world and to make it a better place in the context of planetary health, in the context of the environment. So, I mean, just, coming here, talking about it, seeing everyone here involved in this work, both as mentors and as young activists themselves, I think is great and was fantastic. So thank you. Jeremy, I think.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being inclusive of stepping up to the front of the room so I could see you. Yeah, equally excited. I think what stood out to me from everyone sharing was the idea of on-ramps and that it's over time, there's so many more and more on-ramps that have been growing in the field of planetary health, but we need more. For example, like I chair the associate board for Health and Harmony, and that's an on-ramp for people who are interested in indigenous and land use rights and planetary health action. We were just hearing women in planetary health, that's an on-ramp. Bowsy is an on-ramp for those who want to be creative or who are creatives. And so I think we need to think, how do we create more of these on-ramps for youth in different spaces? And then that will really help grow the movement. But it's very exciting to see where this has grown since the very first Planetary Health Conference back in 2017.
Thank you, everyone.